The moment
So,
she
what do you think
leaned
of the view
closer and
here?
whispered,
It's honestly pretty
"You
incredible.
probably
I'm
regret
really glad we
coming."
came here tonight.
Something
Me
inside
too. Let's
him
have a toast to
tightened,
us.
not from embarrassment, but from the quiet weight of a life that had already taught him how to endure far worse than an awkward dinner. The candlelight flickered between them, reflecting in the untouched glasses of wine, and for a second, the noise of the restaurant faded into a distant hum. This wasn't just a blind date. This was another fragile step into a world he had been forced out of the day. Everything fell apart. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of people who keep going, even when life breaks them, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. He hadn't planned to be here. Not really. 3 years ago, his life had been loud with laughter, filled with the soft chaos of a home that felt complete. Now, it had shrunk into something quieter, something more careful. Mornings began before sunrise, not because he wanted them to, but because responsibility demanded it. His daughter's small footsteps, her sleepy voice, her dependence on him, it was the only rhythm that kept him grounded. Every decision he made, every hour he worked, was measured against one simple question. Would this make her life better? That question had made tonight feel almost selfish. The idea of a blind date had come from co-workers who insisted he needed to get back out there. As if grief were a door you could simply reopen when enough time had passed. They didn't see the nights he stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories that refused to soften. They didn't see how carefully he had rebuilt himself, not as a man chasing happiness, but as a father trying not to fail. Still he came, because a part of him, small and uncertain, wondered if life might still hold something gentle for him. Across the table, she looked equally out of place. Her posture was stiff, her eyes scanning the room as though she was searching for an exit she hadn't yet decided to take. She wasn't what he expected, not distant, not cold, but guarded, like someone who had learned the hard way that hope could be dangerous. When she whispered those words, assuming his regret, she wasn't mocking him. She was protecting herself, and that was something he understood deeply. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he noticed the details most people would overlook, the way her fingers tightened slightly around the stem of the glass, the hesitation in her breathing, the quiet tension in her shoulders. These were not signs of arrogance or disinterest. They were signs of someone who had been disappointed before. When he finally responded, his voice was calm, steady, and unexpectedly warm. He told her that regret was something he had learned not to carry lightly, that life had already given him enough of it, and that sitting here, even if awkward, even if uncertain, was still a step forward, and that mattered more than comfort. For a moment, she just stared at him. Something shifted. The air between them softened, just slightly, like a door cracking open after being shut for too long. The conversation that followed wasn't smooth or perfect. It wasn't filled with easy laughter or effortless charm. It was real, it was hesitant, it was honest in a way that made both of them uncomfortable, but also strangely at ease. He spoke about his daughter, not as a burden, but as the reason he kept going. He described her small victories, her laughter, the way she still believed the world was good. He didn't hide the struggles, the exhaustion, the fear of not being enough, but he also didn't let them define him. She listened, not politely, not out of obligation, but with genuine attention. And slowly, she began to share pieces of her own story, how life hadn't unfolded the way she once imagined, how trust had become something she offered sparingly, how disappointment had taught her to expect less, so it wouldn't hurt as much. They weren't trying to impress each other anymore. They were simply being honest. Time moved differently after that. The initial discomfort faded into something quieter, something meaningful. The restaurant lights dimmed slightly as the evening deepened, and around them conversations came and went. but their table remained anchored in a moment that neither of them had expected. For him, it wasn't about finding love, not yet. It was about realizing that he was still capable of connection, that the part of him he thought had been buried under responsibility and grief was still there, still alive. For her, it wasn't about romance either. It was about being seen without judgment, about having someone listen without trying to fix her or define her. And that, in its own way, was more powerful than anything either of them had hoped for. When the dinner finally ended, there was no dramatic ending, no perfect resolution, just a quiet understanding that something important had happened, something small but significant. They stepped outside into the cool night air, where the city lights stretched endlessly, reflecting possibilities neither of them had allowed themselves to consider before. He thought about his daughter waiting at home, about the life he had built with careful, deliberate steps. He thought about how tonight didn't change everything, but it changed something, and sometimes that's enough. She thought about the way he had answered her whisper, not with defensiveness, not with humor, but with sincerity. She thought about how rare that kind of honesty had become in her world, and for the first time in a long while she didn't feel the need to walk away immediately. They parted without promises, without expectations, but with something quieter, hope. Weeks passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm. Early mornings, long days, quiet nights. Yet something had shifted within him. He found himself smiling more often, noticing small moments he might have once overlooked. The warmth of sunlight through the window, the sound of his daughter laughing, the simple comfort of knowing he was doing his best. He didn't rush anything. He didn't chase what might come next. But he didn't close the door either. And somewhere in the city, she found herself thinking about that evening more often than she expected. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because, for a brief moment, she had allowed herself to lower her guard, and nothing terrible had happened. Instead, something gentle had taken its place. One evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, she asked him a simple question: whether people could be happy again after losing someone. He paused, because that question carried more weight than she could understand. And yet, his answer came without hesitation. He told her that happiness doesn't replace what we lose, it grows around it. That it takes time, patience, and courage to let it in again. But when it does, it doesn't erase the past. It honors it. That night, as he sat alone in the quiet of his home, he realized something he hadn't fully accepted before. He wasn't broken. He was rebuilding. And sometimes, rebuilding means taking chances that feel small to others, but enormous to you. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest moments can change everything, take a moment now to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps spread stories of hope and kindness to those who need them most. And before we reach the end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments, have you ever taken a chance that changed your life in an unexpected way? Because sometimes the most powerful moments don't come from grand gestures or perfect plans. They come from quiet dinners, uncertain beginnings, and a single honest reply that changes everything. And somewhere out there, right now, someone is sitting across a table, whispering their doubts, hoping just maybe that the person in front of them will answer with kindness instead of regret.